All right, I have 10:01, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time and get us started. So I just started the recording. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our June Best Practice webinar for the 21st Century Community Learning Centers in Iowa. My name is Brittany Applegate with the Iowa After School Alliance, filling in for Heidi Brown, our new staff person for the Alliance, because she's at a conference in Chicago this week. Learning some great stuff around STEM to bring back to you all and our other programs in Iowa. So she'll be with us in spirit today, but really excited for our program. It's all about GEPRA, the new GEPRA measures and evaluation. So some really good content for you guys. We have Vic, who's going to lead a majority of the session today, and then Caitlin Schmidt with St. Mark Youth Enrichment, who's going to share a little bit about what the evaluation committee has done and some best practices for tracking and evaluation. So Vic, with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to you first. You should be able to share your screen.
Yes, but I would prefer if Caitlin would go first this morning.
Okay, sure.
Sorry about that.
Okay. I'm adding a couple more things that I'll have ready in just a couple minutes.
Got it.
Thank you.
All right, pressure's on now. I guess I would rather do it first and follow you, Vic. So let me get my screen situated. Okay. I'm presenting from a different like non-PowerPoint thing. So I want to check in. Does everyone see
Yes.
the presentation? Okay.
Yep, we can.
Okay, so I had anticipated maybe Vic, doing the rundown of the GEPRA measure. So this is really just a reminder, as we've all kind of seen the new layout of the GEPRA measure several times now. There are now 5, kind of really 6, with the 1.1, 1.2. So just a quick overview of those is the first really around growth in reading and math. The second is improved GPA. Third is improved attendance. Fourth is a decrease in school suspensions. And fifth, improvement in engagement in learning. So of course, though, we got to pay attention to the grade levels that are relevant for each of the measures, as some grades are called out and only reported for those certain measures. And I'll get into that a little bit further. So I've shared a little bit on what the evaluation committee has done in other contexts before. We've done I did the Impact conference where we shared a reporting tool. So some of you might have seen that, but I wanted to expand on the content a little bit more of how this all gets roped into the process. So wanted to kind of break it down a little bit further into like the different phases of how at least I, as a grantee, report. And again, St. Mark is a community-based organization, so some things might be slightly different, and I'll try to call those out as we get going of what might be different for a school district or a school versus a community-based organization. So overall, this is kind of just the roadmap I see for getting ready to start entering data into the 21 APR system. Data preparation, just the ongoing of a school year or summer where you have to at least start collecting that data through registration or just student information systems. So be collecting it along the way. And then actually getting the outcome data for those students, whether you're the school and you're doing that testing yourself, or requesting that information from a school. Then kind of combining that and understanding how those outcomes are meeting or measuring against the benchmarks that are outlined in GEPRA. So that's like the process of combining the data to know and get it into the template. And then the analysis is kind of the measurement of, is that student meeting this benchmark, or are they not? And then through the tools that we have, hopefully you can enter that, put it all together in one template, and then you would have that ready and open, and we'll see the access into the system, I think, through Vic here, and then you would be totally have it already prepared so that once you're in that system, it's just a matter of copying those numbers, and that would be the goal of the tools that we've created. So I'm just going to kind of go through each of these and then pull up the tool, the data template spreadsheet that we've shared on in the past. So data preparation is really like the student information, all the things that you can have at the start of your programs. This is the information in the past years that has been required in the 21 APR system. I don't know that that's changed yet. That would be, some of this could change depending on what Vic will show us in a little while. Attendance windows, that has changed. So as you're collecting attendance, you would still be able to collect it in a day attendance, but eventually, as you'll see, it'll convert to hours. So this is kind of the stuff that you can have available before you're actually doing, you know, the major part of the outcomes piece, because now the GEPRA measures are, or sorry, the APR is now split up into two windows. One where it'll be more of just this general information, and then the outcomes piece is kind of the second window. So this is kind of the pieces that make up the first window. What I don't know is what is going to be required, or I guess I don't know how it looks now with the program offerings and the frequency. We don't really have that reflected in our spreadsheet at this point in time. So whatever Vic was going to show us is going to be really informative to all of that. But first, I wanted to show how we kind of have the tool available to help with the attendance piece. So I'm going to open up just kind of a dummy spreadsheet. I got to switch my screen to it.
Now, let me make a comment now that attendance conversion is something when you get your data person to run a report, they should be able to do that for you, you know, in that report, and make sure that they're saved that. And that way you don't have to do it every year, because we're going to be reporting with these measures for the next 10 years. So save it, and you don't have to have that, you know, anguish. But if you don't have a data person and you're doing things by hand, that conversion chart is going to be very helpful for you.
Mm-hmm.
And the nice thing is most of the APR is going to be the same. There's just the big thing that's changing is the outcomes with the new GEPRAs.
Yeah, and I was going to show a little bit how at least we built the tool to kind of do that, be helpful in the conversion process. So this right now is built out as something like, this is just a data that I would have as a grantee. I'd be collecting the students' names, demographics. At the end of the year, or end of the summer, I would have the total number of days that they attended. And then in our act, so this is not the template, but if I'm gonna kind of split my screen maybe here. The actual template has, are you seeing in my screen change? The screen sharing settings are a little bit.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So this is the actual template, and it kind of looks similar where you have the summer number of days and then hours, but this is a formula that we added in. And then before school, because the number of hours in a before school program is probably going to be different than after school and summer. So however many number of days, if I just start entering things in here, let's say I'm just going to make up some numbers. Say that person's not in before school, and then after school. It's kind of calculating by itself because 750 days, that's not a real number, that would be reasonable. Okay, so it's calculating because in this column that's highlighted all the way down, I decided how many hours my program is, and I put that in the formula. So the summer, I'm pretending that these students are in a summer program, but 4 hours for a summer program, and then that would be the formula that I would need to carry on for each student. That would be in summer. Before school program is only 2 hours, let's say. And so then that's the calculation there, is that 2 hours. Maybe it's not, maybe it's 3 hours, and then I would just change that and drag that all the way down, and that's going to update for all those students. So I hope that's making sense, that it's just a calculation of the number of days times the number of hours in your program. And we just kind of made it a formula in here so that it would just be calculating. And then you would have this here at the end that's adding up all of the program hours. So it would add up summer, before school, and after school in this column. Is that making sense so far? Okay, and then we have just the hour bands that were in that table that we showed, just as a drop-down menu. So now that I have the actual calculation, 450 hours, I mean, I gave some really generous hours for these students, so they're all gonna kind of be at the higher end, except for this one, 60 hours. Didn't quite attend a lot, so they're in that hour band. So that's
So-
one process, yes. Vic?
You know, this is, it seems like a lot because it's new, but this is really good for us because in the past, if the child didn't do 30 hours for like summer school, we couldn't count them. Or if they didn't do 30 days, you know, we couldn't count them. Now we're counting all the kids. So we get a lot of kids that start out with attendance problems, and it takes time for us to get them to like coming to the program. It may take a couple years before they start coming on a regular basis, but we're going to be able to count all the kids now, and that's going to be huge for us in terms of reporting our attendance. So that's a big win for us.
That's a great point. Okay, so that's kind of the first earlier prep of the data of getting your students situated with their information and then starting this attendance piece. That's still kind of the initial prep of what I called the data preparation, which is really kind of reflecting on that first window of data entry that will be required. So I will be adjusting probably that template to be more helpful once we understand exactly how staff are reported and the program offerings, but I don't quite have that knowledge of what that looks like at this time. Outcome data. So it's going to obviously depend if you're a school and you just have your student information system and you're just able to download a report from your system, or if you're a community-based organization having a data request process to get that from the schools. We do have some existing guidance or templates and tools in the 21st Iowa 21 cclc.com under the grant info area. So there's a FERPA guidance that's helpful to communicate with schools if that comes up as a concern. There also are just data request agreements in there too.
Yes, and if you have problems, you're a community group and you have problems getting your data, get with me because you know, they may have a new data person. There's been a lot of staff turnover and they may not understand that you're working with a federal program. And we may have to have a little meeting so that they understand that this is not an option for them. This is a requirement that we report this data. So, you know, I'm here to help if you need it.
Okay, so then once you would have that, oh, sorry, this one is also just to reference. I have been struggling with kind of understanding how these grade levels map up against all the GEPR measures. So I just put this together as a visual guide of that breakdown of which measures cover which grades. So this is just more for reference. Obviously, when you're requesting data, you don't need GPA, for example, for those elementary age students. So this is just a helpful guide of that. It's not a requesting all of this data for everyone, but sorting which students you're serving in your program by grade might be helpful to narrow in on your data request or pulling from your systems. Okay, so then also other kind of data collection and outcome stuff relevant is the teacher survey, which we have kind of a template that is just a PDF right now of a SurveyMonkey survey that we kind of agreed on the wordings of the questions to be the most helpful of requesting this information from teachers or the teaching staff in your programs. And I just kind of called out the main questions here. There are obviously questions 1 through 4, which are more just like first name, last name, school, that kind of stuff. But the main question is around improvement in their engagement and learning. And so then we've worded it in a way that yes, they improved or they maintained a competent level or maintained in a high level of engagement, because we were finding that just if a student was already meeting expectations engagement, somebody might not say they improved, even though they're doing good in that area. So we've reflected that language to try to help people understand what we're really asking. And then also question 6 is a general way to get some narrative feedback, which is helpful for when we do our local evaluations. So that was the only kind of call out that this might be beyond your student information systems. You actually have to send out the survey process. Okay, combining data, I just wanted to kind of give a tip of how I do this. This might not be super relevant for anyone who has awesome data systems or data people, but I am again a community-based organization. So I have to do a little bit of this back work of once I get the outcomes data, I have to kind of make it work for what it's going to then be entered into the 21 APR system. So again, I'm going to go back to this kind of data set that would be like my internal data that I'm preparing. And then say I get from the school district, the 2021 and the 2020, like the previous year, because that's how the GEPR measure is worded, growth, I think in the last year, or maybe this one isn't a good example. Maybe I'll switch to the attendance rate. That one's a little bit more clear cut. So improved attendance with a student who had a rate below 90% in the previous year. So any student that was below 90%, did they improve? So, you'd have to kind of do this comparison if you're getting just the actual raw data of attendance rates. So then I just convert it into a yes or no question. So like, yes, it's going to meet that 90, they were below 90% when they started last year and they've improved. That's something I do that helps me then when I go into this actual 21 APR template and I have all of these GEPR measures laid out, then I can just say in this attendance line, yes, 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 yes. And it's just a much more visually clear cut, yes, no, they met the benchmark. So that's just a little tidbit piece I do. I keep it really simple in how I can visually see yes, no, versus having numbers and data in there. Okay.
Caitlin,
Keep moving on.
Caitlin, this is Beth. If you go like a 1 for yes and a 0 for no, then you should be able to total them at the end. How
That's a
many
good
yeses you
point.
have.
I have not thought, I always use pivot tables, which I was going to share in the last piece. But that would be a very simple, a much simpler way to do that. I can incorporate that into the committee guide that we'll work on to reflect that change. So the last thing I had on here is just, so once you have all of the outcomes, at least in your data, and yes or no, if students are 1, 0 of yes, they met, or 0, no, they didn't, then you would be able to actually go into this template, and we have an outcomes tab. And then you can start entering the numbers. So I use pivot tables, unlike Beth was saying. Beth's might be much more simpler, that where you could just add the total number. I'm not going to be able to go into this in depth, but pivot tables are, there's a how-to linked right here. I just take this individual student tab and make a pivot table. So then it's going to call out by site and by hour bands the number of students that are yes or no. And then I can enter in here. So I'm just going to make these up again. Oops. And then the percentage, I believe, is what's actually entered into the APR system. They want to know the total percent. So it's a little bit of a process, and I know that not everyone might need all these steps, but it's how I keep everything organized. And then I can have a very clear something to go back to when it's time for the local evaluation. Everything is already done, and then it's very easy to read as far as the total numbers of who's improved, percentages of who's improved, etc. So, oops. That being said, then that outcomes tab in the spreadsheet would be what you would have pulled up and ready to go for when you're entering in the 21 APR system. I haven't seen it yet, so I'm not sure what else needs to get tweaked or would be more helpful to know, or to shift of other data that's going to be entered, but that's the idea of that tool for everyone. So the evaluation committee, we're kind of to be determined, coming up with the best time for future meetings. But in the meantime, if you have questions, we can maybe do a further Q&A on what questions you might have on how to actually use it in another meeting, or you can just reach out to me directly and I can help you. And then a lot of the templates are already posted, but we will be sharing them out, I think, as well after this, in the student survey as well.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Yeah.
That was good. And, I think you've got your spreadsheet set up so that you could do a little bit more data analysis too. Somebody could do it just simply counting, a real simple spreadsheet, because just like math, there's more than one way to solve these problems. And some people like to add a little bit more complexity so that they can look at the data, and that's okay. You can see all the different spreadsheets I have, because I have to do monitoring, and I try to do stuff behind the scenes rather than have you guys answering questions constantly. Let me, I had planned on showing you a live version, and hopefully I can share my screen. Hey, I can share. Okay. I was hoping to be able to show you, here's the live APR, and I just picked an older cohort in there, but notice here it says data cannot be entered at this time. The window doesn't open till tomorrow. So, and there's going to be two windows. The first one, we're going to enter in some of the data, and then the last window, we're going to be entering the outcomes. So we're going to do activities, staffing, and participation, I think, on this first window. But when I go to click on there, this is what I get. Same thing. So I can't really show you the live until tomorrow. Maybe. So let me share something else with you. Share screen. I do have screenshots of the outcome data that I can show you guys. So in the outcome section, notice that there's a little box with a circle around it, and that's the quick guide. So if you need help, you don't understand the measure, or you don't know what to do, click on that quick guide. It'll print up, you can print up PDF of what to do for each one of these sections. So the very first one is, academic achievement state assessments. And they're looking at language, reading and language arts, 1.1, and math 1.2. So look at how they're asking for this data. Grade level 4 to 8 only. So it's a little snapshot. It's not all the kids. It's not, K through 8. It's only 4 through 8. And they want to know, by their participation level, how many kids do you have data to report? So what's nice is even the child that doesn't come to school on a regular basis, we're going to count them this time. Where in the past, we weren't counting like the first 2 bands. They didn't get even in the system. So we're going to be able to show more progress and how we're really dedicated to helping the kids. So if you're a community group, you're going to have to take a look at these measures and make a list of your kids that are in grades 4 through 8 to give it to that data person so that, they know exactly what to pull. I mean, they can easily from their student information system pull the reading and language arts for those children. But you'll probably, based on their participation, you might have to organize it into the number of names that go in each one of those bands. Okay, reading progress, and of the students that we have data for, how many demonstrated growth? Not proficiency, that's a lot higher, but how many had improvement? And, when we get a child that's 2 years behind in reading, we can't wave a magic wand and make that child instantly reading at grade level. It's a process of time and dedication and work. So you work with that child for, a year, and they maybe made progress. Maybe they made halfway to one more grade level, and that's significant. Now we're going to be able to report it. In the past with proficiency, if they didn't meet proficiency, we didn't count them. Any questions? Okay, let's take a look at 1.2, mathematics. And, here we're looking at the same thing. Now, you may be wondering why they put reading and math in Kepler Measure 1 and they divided it. Well, that's because they made a boo-boo. I was on the committee to set up these Kepler measures, and when they presented this all to the states, we said, hey, what happened to math? Are we not doing math anymore? And there was a big silence, and then they said, oh, okay. And within a couple of days, they plugged in the math right into with the reading, and they just separated out the Kepler measure number 1 into 2 sections. So kind of interesting. So you notice that these questions are very similar. Again, the most important is of the students that you have data for, how many demonstrated growth in mathematics? Okay, and again, this is a little bit of a bigger picture. And, you know, with mathematics, they're asking for the state assessment growth rather than something else you're doing. So because they're asking for the state assessment, we're not going to be able to say, yeah, we have chess clubs and, you know, chess clubs are making a difference, you know, with kids. That's not on the GEPRA. That you'll have to report in your local evaluation. But that's okay. So any questions in reading and math? Those are still our priorities. Now we're looking at GEPRA measure number 2. And notice that this is secondary level. So they're asking for grades 7 through 8 and 10 through 12. I don't know why they didn't do 9, but they didn't. So once again, you're going to have to, you know, provide the names of the students if you have a secondary program. Some of you that just running an elementary program, you're going to check that box that says no data to report because you only serve elementary kids. Okay. And you won't have to worry about this one at all. And again, this is looking at the GPA because they felt that as kids get ready to go on to college, one of the measures is the GPA. However, it's a real simple, what they call an unweighted GPA. So basically you take, you know, if they received an A, they got, you know, 4 points, a B is 3 points, a C is 2 points, a D is 1 point, and anything less is no points. And you can also convert that if you're not doing letter grades. But there was one district that wasn't doing letter grades. And what it seemed like when they were doing the grades is they left out one of the letters. And so there was, I think that they didn't have like an A level for the kids. But yeah, you can do these kind of conversions. And notice they want to know, where did the numbers come from? So then the second one is, you know, the number of kids that you have data report in these different bands. And then how many students that you have data for had a prior year GPA of less than 3. So, you know, the kid that wasn't doing well grade wise that has made improvement, they want to know. So this within this measure, this question right here is going to take like a separate report because you're going to have to look at last year's data for the kids that were less than 3.0 GPA and then be able to add those numbers in. And then finally, we're looking at improvement. Did the students improve from last year to this year? And number 3, my favorite, attendance. And that's my favorite because that's the first thing when we start a program that you start to see changes in, is the kids come in more often, they like the program. And it's, you know, it's absolutely critical to everything we do, because if you don't have attendance, you know, the question is, you know, why are we running a program if there's no kids for us to serve? But you shouldn't have any problem growing your program if you have a high quality. Kids are looking for things that will help them. But you have to make the program fun. You know, kids aren't going to come if you just make it a duplication of school and you're just handing them a worksheet. That's why you have community partners. You know, you want to have somebody coming in maybe with animals and the kids get all excited, but they're still learning, but learning in a different way. So notice in attendance, we're looking at grades 1 through 12. They didn't count kindergarten, and that's okay. You know, each one of these measures has a different snapshot of the kids. This is probably the biggest overall snapshot of what we're doing. And less than 15 hours, we're going to be able to count every single kid in the program because of that. And that's a good thing. And this here has 6 bands, and it had a couple more, but we complained as states and they cut it down a little bit. Now look at on the second, the blue down at the bottom. They want to know how many students had a school day attendance rate at or below 90% on the prior school year. So that's how they can tell if, you know, attendance is improving. And here's the entire measure. And then they want to know how many improved their attendance rate. And then, you know, the measure how many students reported the growth. That'll auto-generate once you put your numbers in. Okay, GEPRA measure 4, behavior. And I think that this is in the student information system under referrals. You know, how many, and this is, we're looking at grades 1 through 12. Where did the numbers come from? So, you know, you can just put, you know, the student information system. And they want to know reporting on who had in-school suspensions in the previous year. And then underneath that, how many kids had a decrease in school suspensions in the current year? And I don't think we're going to have much of a problem with that in Iowa, because when I go out and visit, I've talked to, you know, probably over 100 principals, and they all tell me that this program leads to a decrease in suspensions. And sometimes it's really significant. So I think this is kind of a new twist on it. And I think that we're going to be able to show significant data, because this is also a measure of program quality. If kids are engaged, they're less likely to have discipline problems. And then number 5, this is the one that you're not going to be able to get from the student information system. This is the one you're going to have to do a survey on, and it's about engagement with learning. So you're going to report on students in grades 1 through 5, again, elementary. And if you run a program at middle school and high school, you'll simply check no data to report, because it's very specific what they're looking for. So they want to know, where did your numbers come from? And you just would say, you know, we did a teacher survey. And then they want to know how many students did you report on, and, you know, that were, and based on these various bands. So the student that only came, you know, a couple of days, you're still going to count them. And the student that is 270 hours or more, And we should have a lot of these in the 270 range, because if you take 60 hours a month times 10 months, that's 600 hours. And then, take away some for spring break, Christmas break. We're still going to be over 500 hours easy in Iowa. So then they want to know how many have demonstrated improvement in teacher reported engagement and learning. Okay. And that's it for this slideshow. And our evaluation committee has come up with a wonderful teacher survey that you can use.
I included the survey in the materials I sent to Heidi to send out afterwards as well.
Wonderful.
Mhm. It's also on the website, I believe. Maybe not, but it could be. Yeah.
And we've got a lot of experience with doing the teacher surveys from the previous reporting, but this one is just very specific. And each of these measures, pay attention to what grade levels, because don't gather up data if the grade level says secondary and you're an elementary program. And the same thing if you're doing secondary and they're asking you for elementary data, you would just put in there no data to report. And then, it's because of the kids you're serving. So I think that this year is going to be, kind of difficult because it's new. But I think next year is going to be piece of cake. We'll say, wow, this is so much better, because we only report now 2 periods and we don't duplicate. Where in the past, we did 3 times a year, we had to duplicate everything 3 times. And the reason for that is because the person was having to go before Congress 3 times a year to keep our program alive. And we're not in any danger of being cut anymore. We've, established that we are making a difference for kids. But now our next thing needs to be, we need to get sufficient funding so that we can serve all the kids that really need this program and will make a difference in their lives.
Absolutely.
Questions?
Feel free to type your questions in the chat or unmute yourself and speak aloud if you have questions.
Vic, for the stuff that we can start tomorrow, is that pretty much the same as before with the staffing, the activities, the attendance? Does that look pretty much the same?
A lot of that did not change at all.
And I was thinking with that too, once it is open and we can make some of those templates reflect whatever it looks like now, just because without being able to see it, that kind of is just, it is stayed the same since previous years, but if there are any tweaks of I feel like the activities maybe changed slightly, but I was looking through my emails and I can't.
Well, the activities, they may have presented it different a little bit, but those are embedded in ESSA. So we, we're not able to change those around, but the GEPRA measures were actually not in the ESSA. And so we were able to, get permission for revising our measures to better reflect what we do in our programs. And, this took 5 or 6 years to accomplish because, the wheels of federal government move very slowly.
I did find the, well, I don't know which screen I just shared. This is something from an email that, so staffing is staying the same. But then it said activities is just slightly different. Total hours of activities replacing the frequency.
Yeah,
Because we
so
have-
they're gonna probably
Mhm.
ask you about the hours for each activity. But yeah, and the reason I was able to get those outcome screens is because they did a little session with us, and they had what they call a sandbox. It was an APR that kind of a dummy one that we could experiment with, and I was able to get in there and capture those screens. But right now the thing is locked up, and I can't see any of the screens until tomorrow. So I would suggest that tomorrow we all go in there and take a look. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to email me, and make sure that you download those quick guides, because those are pretty useful.
Any other questions?
Yep, and Billy was asking about the grades, kindergarten and ninth grade. Yep, they're not counted for whatever reason. The Fed said that they wanted to have these data snapshots, and I would have counted all the kids, but that's just me. Keep in mind, they've got these statisticians, and for whatever reason, they call the shots on what we report. However, in your local evaluation, you've got a kindergarten program. Make sure you talk about what the kids in kindergarten are doing, since it's not in the APR. And also, if you're serving ninth grade kids, make sure that you talk about what they did for improvement in reading and math. Those can be your local measures, since they're not in the APR. Oh, and the evaluation template, Ron and Rusty are working on that, and they may have a draft copy ready within maybe this week or within the next week or so. Soon as I get that draft copy, we're going to send it out as a draft, so that the evaluation committee can take a look at it, and we can talk about it before we finalize it. It'll get finalized probably in August, before we post it to the website and before we train the local evaluators. But we want to get you that information as quickly as possible, because honestly, there's probably only going to be slight changes from the draft to the final document.
Great, thanks, Vic. I'm not seeing any other questions come through in the chat. So I think we can wrap up for today. I want to say thank you to Caitlin and Vic for taking the time to walk through the GEPRA and the new evaluation templates and all of the resources, especially Caitlin. She's just a rock star on the evaluation committee. And
Yeah, those were some phenomenal slides, and reflect a lot of work. So yeah, thank you, Caitlin.
yes, we really appreciate your leadership and the time that you take.
No worries. And if anyone has any like actual one-on-one support, or we can go further in the actual evaluation committees than this overview if necessary. So please let me know.
Yes, definitely.
Mhm.
That's why we're a network, right? So we can all learn from each other and do this all together. So thank you. We'll be sharing out the recording and the slides and the resources provided today. And as Caitlin said, if there are specific questions that you have, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. All right, thank you so much for taking the time today, and we'll see you all soon. Have a good day.
Happy summer, everyone. Bye.
Have a great summer.